The slowest. All right. Hello, everyone. Looks like the stream is live. Thank you all so much for tuning in today or for watching the recording for those of you tuning in the future. My name is Alex Sorotsky. I'm one of the educators with the Washington Poison Center. And we are here today not to talk about a brand new drug or substance out in the world, but to introduce one of our newest members of our team. So I'm super excited to introduce our new managing director, Dr. Jimmy Leonard. Jimmy, thank you so much for joining today, taking time out of your very, very busy role and day to speak to the people of Washington. How is your treating you so far?
Good. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I'm really excited to be here. Happy to chat, answer any questions that you have or anybody else has, and yeah, just kind of talk about the role here.
Perfect. Now, folks, if you are watching live, providing all the technology is working as we expect it to, please post any and all questions and comments in the thread itself on the live stream, either on Facebook or on YouTube. We should be able to see those, so we'll do our best to answer any questions live. If you think of a question after we cut the stream, or if you think of it later on when you're watching the recording, still post it. We'll monitor that thread and follow up as we can. So let's dive in and get to know Dr. Jimmy Leonard. So, Jimmy, tell us a little bit about your journey here. What is your background and what led you to this role at the Washington Poison Center?
Yeah, so I am a pharmacist by education. I actually graduated from Washington State University College of Pharmacy in 2016. And at that point in time, I met the managing director at the time. His name was Alexander Gerard. And, I kind of had a history of doing drug information, and I thought I was going to do drug information as my job when I was done with pharmacy school. And I got into learned about this as a job, and as some people describe it, it's more like battlefield medic drug information, or GI drug information is what others have referred to it as. And I just really fell in love with the idea of the right now type of thing. So after school, I did a pharmacy residency down in Olympia. And during that period, I was able to be precepted by Alexander and a couple of the poison specialists up here as a pharmacy resident, and then applied for fellowship. And I did a clinical toxicology fellowship in Maryland, which is 2 years from 2017 through 2019. After that, I stayed on working in various leadership roles throughout the Maryland Poison Center, and then joined the faculty. And then the job here was, they were looking for somebody to be managing director, and so I applied and said, this is what I want, right? But from here, this was my long-term goal. It always been my vision of coming back and managing the Washington Poison Center. And yeah, so now I'm here, and you started the end of May. So really excited to be here.
Wonderful. We're very happy we brought you back to Washington. All right. Now, you spoke a little bit to this with your education. I imagine most folks reading your name here could assume that PharmD meant, pharmacy degree. What does DABAT stand for anyone curious?
So the DABAT, as lovingly my wife calls it, is a dingbat, is the diplomat of the American Board of Applied Toxicology. So it's a fairly small group. I think there are about 130 in the U.S. We're mostly pharmacists, a handful of nurses as well, that have done generally either fellowship or done a really intensive 2 or 3 years of additional training, seeing patients at bedside. So when I was in fellowship, we would go to the hospital to see patients who had overdosed, doing other projects like research, and then presentations in toxicology and education, and all kinds of different things. So and then you apply for the ABAT, and then you take the test. And it's a fairly small group. Maybe there are 8 or 9 people that take it every year. It's not like people graduating pharmacy school where thousands taking it. And I think we have about a 50% pass rate right now. So it's not great, but it's difficult, and it's a good training program, and it's a good credential. And like I said, it's a pretty small group. only in like the 120 or maybe 130 at this point in time.
Wow. All right. Well, thank you for giving some of that context. All right. So jumping back to now with your role at the Poison Center, can you speak a little bit to what a managing director is and does?
Yeah, so the managing director, really the goal is to oversee the call center, right, and support the staff and make sure that they're able to do what they do best, right, which is answer poisoning calls, right, which includes things like helping make sure that their continuing education is going, right, a little bit of overseeing some of the schedule, although we have an amazing supervisor who does a lot of the scheduling, right, to kind of take that component of it. Meeting with external parties and like the departments of health to help coordinate and make sure that we have um, some of our contracts continuing and making sure that our message is getting out to them, right? One thing recently is this whole diamond shrooms outbreak that's going on, where people have gotten really sick after eating this mushroom laced chocolate. And so as it was really starting, the Department of Health reached out to us, and we kind of set up a collaboration where when cases get called into us, we're talking to them and they're able to reach out, right, to the hospital and the patient, and maybe actually go through and figure out where they bought it. But so part of that is me helping maintain some of those connections as well, right? There's also a component of teaching, right, for external entities, and then just day to day answering poisoning questions when some of our newer specialists have questions or some of our older specialists have questions, saying, oh yeah, I know I've seen that patient, or I've seen a patient just like that, right? And so being able to answer those questions is really important as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I think a lot of folks, if they're kind of loosely aware of poison centers, may assume that we're a group of volunteers that takes calls on, like, what if your kid gets into the Tide Pod? And yes, we do take those calls. And my goodness, is there so much expertise, additional certification, ongoing training that happens with our call takers. And Jimmy's job is making sure that call center runs as smoothly as possible. All right, thank you for speaking to that. So you spoke a little bit about this when talking about your background, but I have the kind of mean question of, if you had to pick a singular favorite part of working in a poison center setting, what would that be?
So it's been a while since I've really worked on the phones. I have, but I really think that, like, being able to alleviate somebody's stress immediately, right, is an amazing component of it, right? Or guide them to doing the right thing. So you have somebody who's frantic because the little kid got into something, or they made a mistake, right? And either being able to say, first off, you did the right thing by calling, because we can address this really quickly. And then secondly, addressing the issue. If it's something that's not going to be a problem, right? They might be really worried and really worked up, and be able to answer that question just saying, nope, you're fine, right? And then being really truly being specialized into a fairly narrow area, right? People come to me with questions, right? Different groups outside of the world of toxicology even come to us with questions that say, this is your area, we know that you know these types of things, right? And being recognized to say, like, oh yeah, this is something that we can facilitate, something that we can answer potentially.
Absolutely. Something that's always really fascinated me since working here. And, to clarify, folks, I am not a call taker. I'm not one of the specialists in poison information. I can talk about the call line all day, but I'm not going to be answering that phone. But what really stands out to me, just to your point, is how specialized, like, our call takers are. In addition to having so much pharmacology and toxicology training, they also have to know how to speak to folks on the phone, how to calm down someone who's potentially panicking, because they're very afraid. And I think that's one of the most profound services the poison center, that all poison centers can offer outside of that clinical expertise, is that reassurance. You did the right thing by calling us. And I'm going to pause for a second and just speak a little bit to the call line. We talked around it a little bit, but let's go through some of the basics. This is the national toll-free poison helpline, 800-222-1222. It's in our logo up at the top there. It's on the bottom of the screen right now. We are literally open 24/7. Call us right now. Call us at 2 a.m. Someone's going to answer that phone. Call us anywhere in the country. You'll be routed to your local poison center based on your area code. We are also a confidential service, so all the laws that protect your information at the doctor's office apply to us as well. And if you know anyone who prefers a language other than English, we do have interpretation services available as well. So we can that does not need to be a barrier in calling us. And I also want to mention something that makes the Washington Poison Center rather unique compared to a lot of other poison centers is that we are an independent nonprofit. Quite a few poison centers, most in fact, are attached to a host institution, like a university or a hospital. And there are pros and cons to operating in both ways. And I think one of the biggest strengths of the Washington Poison Center is that we can react quickly to things. If we and our directors and our board of directors say, yes, let's do it, then we do it. And I think that is a really excellent kind of freedom in mobility that our poison center has to offer.
Yeah, I agree. There's some historical things that have been done, out of the poison center where you don't have to be concerned about, somebody else's interest with laws to be able to say, we're really about prevention, right? And you don't have to say, another arm wants to capitalize on some drug in the law. We're here about prevention, right? And so that's a core component that we don't have to worry about. And other things, like you said, that quicker, response time, right? So when there were some of the different measles outbreaks, right, the staff developed really a just-in-time, like rapid training, had some additional workers that were trained up to just be quickly answering calls, right? And online, really fast to answer tons and tons of questions. And yeah, that really is something, being an independent group, as opposed to being attached to a university or attached to the state, what have you, is it's a really good strength.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so bringing it back to you and some of your favorite things or most interesting things for you. What are the most interesting types of cases for you? What really gets you like fascinated with different kinds of cases and calls to the poison center?
Yeah, so I think really the cases that interest me the most are some of the cases that were really, fringe and newer uses of some of our like therapeutics and potentially antidotes, right? So using old antidotes for new toxins, right, and really looking at some of those mechanistic components of it, and then so that's part of it. But then also just evaluating like outbreaks, right? So when I was in fellowship, there was the whole synthetic cannabinoids that were laced with rat poison was happening, right? And so Maryland was one of the small epicenters of it. And so we had, essentially real-time tracking. We were getting cases basically daily and then working with the Department of Health for they would get the rest of the information, anything that we couldn't gather, and then, trying to reframe that the messaging and get it out there, right? We learned a lot of lessons. It's really difficult to get some of that messaging out to the key people, right? A lot of like physicians are super busy, and so trying to get the messaging to them was potentially really difficult, and we worked really hard at it, and got some of it out there, which was really important. And then of course, the cases that can be a little bit frustrating, but some of the really sicker patient cases, it's really unfortunate that somebody is overdosed, but it's also somewhere where we can offer our expertise, right? And being able to say this is an intervention that will help and this is something that won't help, and try to help guide that team is really good, especially to see good outcomes when they do occur.
Absolutely. Now, to add a little context to those who may not know this, I certainly didn't before working at the Poison Center. Most of our calls come from folks at home, folks at work, folks in school. A pretty big percentage, though, come from hospitals and other healthcare facilities. And generally, when a hospital is reaching out to us, for that additional consultation and feedback. It tends to be pretty serious cases. And correct me if I'm wrong here, Jimmy, but it's my understanding that tends to be perhaps more novel substances or combinations of substances that particular department or that particular hospital just has not seen as much, and they want that other level of expertise just to make sure they are treating the patients the best way possible.
Yeah, it is a lot of those combinations and some of the newer ones. And then the big thing is really like just massive doses of some of our older drugs, right? And so that's, the patient is already, potentially very sick by the time they present. And we get involved at all levels, ranging from this person, can be treated at your hospital to, nope, you need to transfer this person. They're, at very high risk. So yeah, lots of different cases from healthcare facilities, and some of them are very unique, right? And some of them are fairly common that we hear about every single day. But yeah, and there's really been an evolution over the last 30-40 years, right? From a lot of our cases were like 20 to 25 healthy people maybe they ingested one substance, to we're seeing a lot of older adults, 50, 60, 70-year-olds, multiple medications that they take. They take their meds, they accidentally take somebody else's meds, 2 or 3 days worth. It can really get into a lot of trouble potentially.
Definitely. And folks, I bring up that fact about how the Poison Center helps on the back end with hospitals so that you're getting that same level of expertise that hospitals do, that other healthcare facilities do. All right, so we're getting close to the end of our stream. You still have a couple moments left to put in any additional questions. And like I said, once the stream ends, feel free to post comments, questions, and we'll follow up as we can. But Jimmy, before we wrap up, are there any final messages that you would like viewers to take away?
So, as all Poison Center discussion should end with, if you have any questions or concerns, think you've been poisoned, right? You should call the Washington Poison Center or your regional Poison Center, wherever you're located, at the 800-222-1222 line, right? It's free. It's confidential. You're going to give your name, right? You're going to have an answer within minutes, probably less than that, right? Our staff can assess and triage things so quickly, right? You might think they've never heard this before, and they probably have heard it before, right? Not a lot of brand new sentences come out of our cases here, right? So just call. If you have any questions, think you've been poisoned, have a question about drug interactions, what have you. We're free, confidential.
Oh, it looks like it's cutting out a little bit at the end, but I think I caught what you were saying, Jimmy, that if you think you've been poisoned or you just have a question, give us a call anytime. Well, I think that is a perfect note to end on. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in, and be kind to each other, be safe, and give us a call anytime you need. Thanks, everyone. Take care.